welcome back to Fireside Giants with your boys Alex and Anthony. Looking at yesterday's game, Jets-Giants, not the most enjoyable contest, the Snoopy Bowl, and 10-6, not much offense. The Giants really haven't produced that much offense to begin with this preseason, but there were a couple silver linings, a couple standout performances. We want to break them down, discuss them. And most of all, man, after two relatively solid offensive line performances, we saw the 2023 version of the Giants offensive line last night. Tommy DeVito, yeah, there are criticisms, but man, the guy had no time. The receivers weren't open. The offensive line was turnstiles once again. It's not what you want to see, but again, it was mostly backups. The Giants did not play anyone that could have, I guess, at risk to injury or whatever it might have been. Even Trey Hawkins and Tyrone Tracy didn't play yesterday, or Eric Gray. So kind of an interesting development there where most of the Giants' backups didn't feature in this one. They were like, we're keeping everybody healthy. First play of the game, Timmy Horn goes down, carted off the field with an Achilles injury. That's why, stuff like that. I mean, I prayers up to him. Hopefully he's okay. But that's why you don't play your starters, in that third preseason game, because you get hurt and guys go down, and the Giants lost multiple players, including Evan Neal with an ankle injury, the same one that was surgically repaired. We're going to discuss him. And man, I mean, Tack McKinley put him in the freaking spin cycle. Not what you want to see. He got demoralized once again. And at this point, I mean, yeah, we'll give him some more time. We'll see if he can bounce back and showcase anything. But I want to kind of talk about him, what the progression there looks like at this point. Thank God we have Jermaine Illuminor. Thank God they went out and addressed that right tackle position, because otherwise we'd be in really deep crap right now, Anthony. Looking at this game, anything that kind of stood out to you? We could start with Evan Neal, talk about this offensive line. Look, Tommy DeVito, as I mentioned, there were flaws, but what are you supposed to do, man? He was under pressure immediately every single snap. It was not pretty.
Yeah, I'm going to exonerate Tommy DeVito of most of what happened last night just because I don't think he had nearly enough time to operate in a pocket, nor did he have quality receiving talent around him. He was playing with the worst of the worst on the Giants' 90-man roster. He was just put in a bad situation. He didn't make the most of it necessarily. He wasn't perfect by any means, but I thought that going out there, what the Giants put on the field was just tough for Tommy DeVito to compete with. Before we talk about Evan Neal, Alex, I want to talk about KJ Cloyd because I was looking at the box score. This man had 16 tackles last night and 2 tackles for a loss. That's an insane stat line. That guy went crazy last night. That's a way to maybe not make the Giants roster because they do have a lot of linebackers, but definitely be stashed on the practice squad or get picked up by another team around the league if he does get cut this upcoming weekend. So KJ Cloyd, shout out to him. Pretty cool performance there. And there were a few decent performances on the defensive side of the ball. But like you said, it was the offensive line highlighting that was the problem for the Giants. That's really concerning because we know Carmen Brasillo comes in here as the new offensive line coach. In week 1 of the preseason with the Detroit Lions, we saw the backups look really good. They actually turned in a pretty solid performance. And honestly, Alex feels like the offensive line, the backups have gotten worse each week. The starters looked great in week 2, which is still encouraging. We're going to hang our hat on that and hope that that's going to be the trend during the regular season. But the backups have not looked great in the other preseason games outside of that first one. And I don't really know if there's much to make of that, but I do think that it's discouraging to see Evan Neal and John Michael Schmitz go out there, play in this preseason game to try and get these reps, pretty much just making up for lost time because they missed so much time during training camp. Both of them get injured. Now, it seems like neither one of them are severely injured. It seems like they both should be ready for the start of the regular season in 2 weeks. But even still, seeing John Michael Schmitz, seeing Evan Neal both get ankle injuries, not encouraging, pretty bad stuff. Alex, what are your thoughts on Evan Neal, the way that he played? And obviously, I know it's going to become a huge discussion now. He's been playing tackle. He's been terrible at tackle. He got beat around the edge, gave up a sack again last night. He looks like a guard. Is it time to start playing him at the guard position? Is that the way to save Evan Neal's career? For me, I think that it is, but I'm curious to hear your take as well.
I mean, you watch him play, and it looks like he's in quicksand. By the time Tack McKinley was by him, he hadn't even got his hands on him yet. You know what I mean? This is the same old Evan Neal that we've seen. It's the same issues over and over and over again. He is slow to react. He's slow to comprehend what move the opposing pass rusher is doing. He's slow to get his hands up. He's slow to get his feet wide. He's slow to get in his set. He's slow at every single aspect. And yeah, he's rusty, I'm sure. He's been out for a while. Hasn't played in a long time. But this is nothing unusual. We've seen this exact same thing throughout the first 2 years of his career. It's just showing up again. Look, I think that he will take steps forward, But if I'm the Giants, I'm going out and signing Tyree Phillips right now, who's sitting there in free agency, who can offer you swing capabilities at both tackle spots. And the Giants need anything. The Giants need help there. Their backup offensive tackle situation is not good. Of course, Matt Parrott, obviously, with the Denver Broncos, looking pretty good right now, of course, somehow. But, the Giants do need some depth here, and I do think that Tyree Phillips, who has experience with this team and is looking pretty solid, at least just in terms of his health, I do think that right now, if you're looking at this offensive line, the depth is scary. If any of those two starters go down, Illuminor or Andrew Thomas, we are facing catastrophic situation. And to be quite honest with you, Anthony, there's only one person to blame right now, and it's Joe Shane for not building this offensive line properly, for not developing these talent, for not identifying the potential weaknesses of these players. Evan Neal, I think most GMs would have taken him in the top 10. I think he was considered a top 10 pick. He was athletically gifted. He was a different player at Alabama. That dude's confidence has been put in the absolute gutter. The best thing the Giants can do right now is change his position and let him build confidence elsewhere. Give him basically a clean slate. Because right now he's carrying baggage from 2 bad seasons and an injury, and a mental deficiency because of his confidence levels are so shot. He's going in there expecting to fail, not looking to win, not looking to succeed. He's expecting to fail now. And you can see it based on the way he reacts to things, the way that he sees things, the way that his mental processing has deteriorated to levels that are unforeseen. At this point, you're looking to use his anchor as his best attribute, right? His anchor is what makes him good. You cannot bull rush Evan Neal, but you can beat him with speed. If you're an offensive guard, you're going to be using that anchor a lot more than if you're an offensive tackle, in my opinion, especially because teams know how to beat him. They just use speed rush against him, use that bend around the edge, and he can't stop it. You don't really beat him inside because you don't have to. You could just run around the edge, and the Giants are dropping back their quarterbacks, 4 or 5 steps right into the path that Evan Neal cannot cover. So it's just problematic. It's a failure. It's a recipe for disaster. Any synonym you want to use for disaster, you can use. But at the end of the day, they got to utilize that strength. That's his best attribute. And at guard, he can utilize that strength. He can be more of an asset. He can be more of a solution and develop there. They have to start cross-training him. It's time. You can't make the same mistake you did with Eric Flowers years ago, and they waited too long, and then he ended up, becoming a better guard. I'm not saying he was a good player, but he was better at guard. He was at least serviceable. And the Giants waited too long for that to, make that transition. Evan Neal, it's time. It's time. They got to go get Tyree Phillips, who can at least play. He's been decent for the Giants at times in the past. But this is a failure of epic proportion. The Giants have gotten so little value from their first-round picks over the last couple seasons, whether it be, DJ, whether it be Kadarius Toney, whether it be guys like Evan Neal, the list goes on. DeAndre Baker, going back a couple more years. The lack of production from their first-round picks is what ruins a team. It's what hurts your foundation. It's what destroys any hope of progress. We're hoping for a lot from, obviously, Malik Neighbors, and we think that he's a star. We're hoping for a big season from Kayvon Thibodeau. We're hoping for Deontay Banks to take big steps forward. That's the majority of Joe Shane's first-round picks. The jury is still out for sure, but Evan Neal is a complete bust at this point. They need to find any value they can get from him, because the longer they wait, the more his value deteriorates. At this point, I think if he doesn't take a big step forward, they got to find a trade partner and look for anybody that's willing to take a chance on him at the deadline or even next year. We'll see how it goes. But right now, his value is in the absolute crapper. The only real value he has is his rookie contract at this point. That's the only real value that he has for this Giants team, because you cannot trust him at tackle. You cannot trust him anywhere at guard because he has no training there, no experience in the NFL. In my opinion, Anthony, I imagine you agree with this. It's time to transition him. It's time for him to start cross-training because they need to find any sense of value. He can't even be a competent backup, in my opinion. You can't put him out there as a reserve. He's too much of a liability. He's even a backup. You got to go get Tyree Phillips because he's better than Evan Neal right now. It's a complete disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it is a complete disaster, and I do think they should move him to guard. But one of the things that you said there that I want to highlight before I really talk about Evan Neal is missing on draft picks, because you said they miss on a lot of first-round draft picks. It's not just that. Josh Azidu has not looked great either. That 2022 draft, the Giants spent 2 top 3-round picks on the offensive line, and neither one has panned out at all. The Giants wanted Evan Neal to be a bookend tackle for them, and they wanted Josh Azidu to be an eventual starter on their starting 5 of the offensive line. Neither one of them is a starter. Both of them are very bad. That is not good for Joe Shane. It doesn't bode well for his ability to draft, especially in the first round, in the third round. They needed two starters on the offensive line in that draft, and they got zero. They missed on both of those players. And Marcus McKethan was also in that draft class. He hasn't done much either as a backup, so he's just going to remain a backup. So with Evan Neal, I think that there is an argument to be made that he should be playing guard. I think when you look at his strengths and his weaknesses can better be masked at the guard position than they can at tackle. Because at tackle, he's just not quick enough to beat speed rushers. And when that's the case, then you have to chip a tight end the entire game, like the Giants did last season, basically making Daniel Bellinger a sixth offensive lineman. I don't want that to be the case for Daniel Bellinger or Theo Johnson or whoever is playing tight end for the Giants. I want them to be able to go out there and play tight end, not sixth offensive tackle. So for the Giants with Evan Neal, I think the best way that you get the value out of him, putting him in at guard and just letting him anchor. Just be an anchor. Just use your power, your strength, your big body, your frame, just in the middle of the offensive line. And that's the only way they're going to save his career, in my opinion. Now, you did float out the idea of potentially trading him. I don't think that's possible. I don't think anyone around the league even views him as worthy of coughing up even a seventh-round pick at this point, because he's been that bad. I mean, we're talking about Evan Neal going up against potential
Backups.
practice squad
Third
players.
stringers.
Yeah, like guys
I'm looking
who
at his.
might
I'm
not make the
watching his
roster.
freaking snaps right now, dude. I've never seen somebody look so weak yet have so much power. Like he's just being tossed around. I've never seen an offensive lineman end up on the floor more than him. Like he can't stay upright. He's not hustling. He's not even running. Like I'm watching a play where I think it was it might have been Joshua Kelly or Turbo. One of the running backs is nice run, maybe 20 yards upfield. Every offensive lineman is hustling, like hauling ass downfield, and he's walking. You know what I mean? Like that stuff shows up on tape. I'm watching it right now. Like that stuff. I'm like, coach, I'm looking at this guy saying, well, like, where is he? He's walking while everyone's running full speed upfield. You know, if you're running a hurry up offense and he's not hustling and he's not in his place and he causes a false start and it's the fourth quarter, these things matter. These details matter to me. Like, I mean, they definitely matter to coaches. And man, like in the run game, he had a couple good snaps. But I just saw like a defensive back push him out of the way, along with a tight end. Like he is so slow to react. Like he even when he's trying to block in open space, he's like floating. He's like skating along with the guy, and then he ends up trying to change direction to get back because they just basically these guys are just running with him until they change direction. He can't keep up. Like he literally cannot keep up. He's so slow to react. Like it's unbelievable how he's fallen from the tree after being such a promising prospect. In the run game, he has a couple good moments, as I mentioned. He can pave the way because of that size. But when it comes to shedding blocks, when it comes to blocking in open space, his lack of mobility and agility is evident on film. It's evident. It's really, really bad. He's looking in quicksand. I don't understand how this has happened. I don't understand how far he's fallen. Like this is not the prospect the Giants drafted. Like it's kind of scary actually looking at this, watching these reps. It's pretty bad.
No, it's really bad. And I think that the argument for moving him into guard, though, is just the fact that he's played it before, not at the NFL level, but when you look back at his collegiate career, he started out as a guard at Alabama. He played left guard. And I think that for the Giants, trying to salvage whatever is left of Evan Neal and his talents, moving him to guard, playing him in a position that he's somewhat familiar with, whether it be on the left side or the right side. He's never played right guard, but I'm sure that he could be moved into that position as well. I think it's the only way that you get any value out of him. I don't think you get any value out of trading him. You definitely don't get any value out of putting him at right tackle. We've learned that lesson. And who knows, maybe Evan Neal could have been a decent left tackle. Maybe it's just the flipping of positions over to the right side has really messed up his career that badly. I doubt it, but he was a left tackle in his final collegiate season at Alabama. But he also did play left guard, and I think that's where the Giants need to start exploring, moving him into guard, seeing if he can salvage his career there, and maybe have a turnaround, because we're going into year 3 of the Evan Neal experience. They're definitely not picking up his 5th-year option, so next year is going to be a contract year for him. Mm-hmm. So he really only has this season and next to turn it around and prove that he can be any part of the Giants' future. Right now, it's obviously spiraling towards he's not going to be part of the future. Probably not even on the roster next year.
Dude.
In fact, Alex, I mean, is this guy on the roster bubble right now? Maybe.
I don't think he's on the roster bubble because I think he's still coming back from injury and they're going to give him time. But like, I'm watching that Tack McKinley sack that he gave up, and when I tell you he stabs, like he goes to stab his inside shoulder, and he just crumples. Like we're talking about a guy that is massive, powerful. Like he was drafted to have that power factor. Like he hits you with that jab and you're thrown off of your base. Takk McKinley runs straight into his outside, to Evan Neal's outside shoulder, and Evan Neal uses his inside hand to try and push him off balance. And by the time his hand gets there and makes contact, Takk McKinley is already by him. And all I see, nobody else is like this, by the way. This picture I'm watching right now, nobody else is like this. I can see the back of Evan Neal's jersey. I can see 73 on his freaking jersey. Everybody else is straight up blocking. You can see the front side of their body. He is spun all the way around and chasing Takk McKinley back into Tommy DeVito. It is so bad at just the lack of aggression, the lack of hand placement, the lack of fundamentals. Like he's got to get that hand out there and stab and then throw him off balance. He's stabbing him with his inside hand as Takk McKinley's already past him. Hit them with the outside hand. Throw him off his balance, man. Like it's so bad. Like he has no power from anywhere. Like his anchors, he can't anchor because people run right around him. His upper body strength, he's leaning forward. His hands are extended. He's already blown by. The bend from Takk McKinley's a backup, guys. He's a guy like fighting for a roster spot for the Jets, and he looks like freaking like prime Aaron Donald right now, a prime freaking JJ Watt. It's embarrassing. If you're a guy of Evan Neal's size and stature, and you can't even show any force, show any power, there's nothing there. Like it's like he loses it the second he steps on a football field. I don't know what it is, man. I really think it is just technique and fundamentals. I think he is not cut out to be a tackle. I think he's completely lost it, and he never really had it since he entered football. Bobby Johnson, man, that guy committed an act of crime against this offensive line, against some of these young pieces. There's no way that you can convince me that Evan Neal came into this league with this low of a floor. This was coached into him. This was a product of bad coaching, and he has not found his way back yet. Like, he's just getting back into the swing of Carmen Brasillo. It's going to take a monumental miracle to get this guy to be competent at this rate. I mean, looking at this, just watching him, the pass protection, it's abysmal. It's terrifying to watch, man. And Carmen Brasillo's got this would be the greatest turnaround in Carmen Brasillo's coaching history if he figures out how to get the most out of this guy. But at this point, gotta just compound good days. And yesterday was nothing but a bad day.
Yeah, and I'll give the benefit of the doubt to Carmen Brasillo here because, like you said, I think that Evan Neal was poorly coached by Bobby Johnson, and other factors have contributed to his downfall. And I will say, I think that there could have been a chance for Neal to start to turn things around if he was healthy this offseason and contributing in those practices and working under the tutelage of Carmen Brasillo. But he just wasn't healthy, and so he wasn't practicing. I do think that there's kind of an argument to be made that maybe, some fans have given Daniel Jones benefit of the doubt, said that he was knocking off Russ last week versus Houston. Maybe fans can make the same argument for Evan Neal. I don't think you can, just because of how bad Evan Neal has been throughout his career. But I will say I think that Carmen Brasillo, we believe in him. We think that he's going to pay dividends on this offensive line and coach these guys up and make them better players. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he does that for Evan Neal, but he hasn't gotten the opportunity to really coach Evan Neal yet, except for maybe the last week and a half when he returned to practice. We haven't gotten enough Evan Neal, so he needs to practice more, he needs to practice harder, and he just needs to play better. Otherwise, I think that he will end up on the roster bubble in the coming weeks, because I think that the Giants are going to have some tough decisions to make all over this roster, whether that be at linebacker, where they've had a lot of standout performers this preseason, whether that be a wide receiver, where they have a lot of depth, or even quarterback, if they want to hold a third quarterback or not. That's going to be a big discussion in the next 2 weeks. All of those factors are going to come into play when they decide whether or not they want to just jump ship on this Evan Neal experiment. I don't think that they will. Like you said, he's been recovering from injury, a former first-round pick. He's got talent, all that stuff. They probably give him more time, but I don't know. I think the leash is super short, and I wouldn't really make it mandatory to keep him on the roster if I were Joe Schoen.
I'm seeing people on Twitter saying that they think he looked good. I don't see this at all. I see him on the floor a lot in the first couple of reps of this game. There were some better pass rush things, but keep in mind, he even if he won 50% of these reps, he's playing as third stringers and he's losing a good portion of them. That's not encouraging. You ask him to go up against DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. I don't think everyone's going to want to see this guy play on this football team ever again. You got to understand, we're watching him against career backups, guys who aren't going to be on the Jets roster in a couple days. So keep that context in mind. Against starters, Evan Neal's not even remotely close. A move inside is inevitable. It is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. I think the Giants are going to go up and scoop an offensive tackle up. Could be a guy like Tyree Phillips, a cheap free agent, veteran minimum deal, someone just like a body that has experience that can at least move. The problem with Evan Neal at this point is just his lack of mobility. It's a major issue, and he can't be considered a backup. I know Dan Duggan, I think, of The Athletic, floated the idea of him actually starting on the bench. I think that's probably where he ends up. Just on the bench the first couple games of the season, just getting healthier and practicing. And I don't think they'll start him. I don't think he'll be an active player for the first couple weeks, especially after this most recent ankle roll. So I know he said he was fine after the game, but we'll see how things progress there. But in any case, other players that look pretty good. I mean, Joshua Kelly is probably gone. Obviously 40 yards, 5 yards per attempt on 8 carries. But receivers didn't do much. 103 yards. Miles Boykin had a couple of receptions. But Bryce Ford Wheaton, I think he's going to be cut. Allen Robinson, he might even be cut. Isaiah Hodgins was in this game, had one catch for 3 yards. He might even be on the bubble low key. I think Isaiah McKenzie makes this team. But then again, you look at the defense. You mentioned KJ Cloyd. Talk to me about him. And also another one that's probably making this team, Benton Whitley, UDFA from 2022. Those two guys had good games. 16 tackles for KJ Cloyd. He looked natural back there, man. He looked like a natural linebacker. Like he was filling the gaps, making tackles, being aggressive, had a couple tackles for a loss. Love to see that. What were your impressions of him? Definitely a silver lining on that defensive side.
Yeah, it was an impressive performance, and that's what you need to see in that final week of the preseason. You want guys that you don't know of to just kind of stand out and make a name for themselves, and I think KJ Cloyd did that in some ways. And like you said, Benton Whitley as well, he had a sack and a half, and he had 4 tackles and an extra tackle for loss with 3 QB hits. So he was in the backfield all day long pressuring the quarterback. He's had a really good summer. I think with this Giants team needing a little bit of depth behind the guys like Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. You had Boogie Basham playing out there last night. He didn't get a sack. He didn't have any quarterback hits. But Benton Whitley has been consistently applying pressure to the quarterbacks. He ended up getting a sack and a half and 3 quarterback hits. So I think there is a chance that he makes this roster as a backup edge and pass rusher. And then with KJ Cloyd, I think it's an uphill battle for him as an off-ball linebacker, inside linebacker to make this team because you've got Okereke, you've got McFadden, and then you have Deontay Johnson, who's injured but could return by the start of the regular season, and a few other guys that the Giants like there. So might be difficult for KJ Cloyd to make the roster, but if he doesn't make the roster, Alex, this could be a player that I see the Giants capitalizing off of a really strong preseason week 3 performance, maybe trying to trade for a late round draft pick somewhere around the league, or maybe they just try and stash him on the practice squad. But there's a really good chance that he does get picked up. Now, one other player that stood out to me, Alex, and I want to bring this up because this is not a Giants player. Maybe he could be, though. I'm going to talk about Leonard Taylor III, defensive tackle who went undrafted this year, signed with the New York Jets. He's had a phenomenal summer, but there's probably not any room for him on their roster. He had 4 tackles, he had a sack and a half, he had a tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hits. If I'm the Giants, I am trading a late round draft pick, and I am picking up Leonard Taylor III. I know that they like Elijah Chapman. He didn't play last night, which pretty much confirms that he's going to make the roster and maybe even play a starting role for the Giants. But I think adding more depth there, young, talented depth, Leonard Taylor III, he shouldn't have gone undrafted. He totally should have been a draft pick. He's available on the Jets. If they end up cutting him, the Giants need to be all over it. If they don't end up cutting him, I think that the Giants should try and make a trade for him. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, this was a great opportunity, not just for the Giants to evaluate their own guys, but to see some of the Jets guys too. They have some really interesting players that could be of interest. Obviously a guy like Leonard Taylor had a really solid game, 1.5 sacks, tackle for a loss, 3 QB hits. You love to see that. Same thing with Benton Whitley for the Giants, though. 1.5 sacks. Again, you're talking defensive tackle compared to an edge rusher in Whitley, but also had 3 quarterback hits. If they, if you're the Giants and you want to add some more depth there, you could go out and find a guy like this. They, like you said, may have to trade for him, but I do like Jordan Riley. I do like Elijah Chapman. If they manage to find a decent trade they can make, and the Jets get something in return if they for a guy that we're going to cut anyway, I could see that being a solution. But I do think that there were some interesting players on this Jets team that the Giants will certainly be looking at next week when cuts do come around. And what was Leonard Taylor? When was he drafted? He's a rookie out of Miami.
He was undrafted.
Oh, he was an undrafted rookie out of Miami. So, I guess another Elijah Chapman kind of, undrafted this year and, making a name for himself. So definitely an interesting player. This preseason, I think he has 8 tackles, 2.5 sacks. Pretty solid stuff there from him.
Leonard Taylor's a good player, and the context on him is that going into last year with the draft, he was supposed to be a first round draft pick. Like they were saying, if he continues on his trajectory, stacks together another good year, maybe not a first round pick, but he should have been a top 100 player in this year's draft. He didn't have a great final collegiate season, ends up falling off the power rankings in the draft boards, ends up going undrafted. So, what really the story is here, this is a player with a ton of talent that didn't realize his potential at Miami, ending up with the New York Jets and a really good coaching staff, undrafted, way more potential than most undrafted players. Obviously, outplaying his draft stock so far, looking really good for the Jets. This is pretty much like a situation where if the Jets hold on to him or if the Giants were to grab him, he would be a guy who has at least fifth round talent that went undrafted. So for me, I would be willing to probably give up a late round draft pick for him and trade for him if the Jets aren't going to be able to hold him on their roster. Again, I like Chapman. I think he's great, and I think he's going to be the starter. But just to add more depth behind him and have more young talent on this defensive line that is a little thin and uncertain, I like Leonard Taylor. He looked really good. Like you said, though, Benton Whitley looked great. Elijah Chapman was a real riser all summer long for the Giants. He's definitely going to make this roster, and I do have a lot of faith in him as well.
Yeah, another guy for the Jets that could shake free is a guy like Chaz Surratt. Really solid player for them this preseason. He's been excellent. I think he's over 87 snaps, has 12 assists, 6 tackles in total. Hasn't given up much in coverage. He's been grading out really well against the run. So the Giants are very, very weak at linebacker right now with their depth. So if he shakes free, could be an option. He has had some trouble staying healthy. That's another name, though, to like kind of throw into the mix. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of players they're looking to acquire, but first and foremost, the secondary desperately needs support. We'll see what happens. I know Alex Johnson's been a guy that they've really liked this preseason and whatnot, but anybody else that has really stood out, it's been kind of ugly back there. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think Darren Beavers is getting cut. Timon Fox, I think, makes it. Darnay Holmes, I think he may get cut. I think it's 50-50 right now. I think Breon Borges is getting cut, more of a special teams kind of guy. I think we're gonna see like 5 or 6 claims this year. It's gonna be a lot. I think this depth is certainly up for grabs. This team is stronger at the top, and then the middle, the depth is and then the depth to the depth is non-existent. But most teams are kind of like that. Just in general, the Giants need to upgrade a couple spots with some projectables and guys that have a little bit more upside. So we'll see how things progress. But this game was full of negatives for the Giants. There were a couple silver linings. We love to see, Benton Whitley stepping up. KJ Cloyd had a big performance. Giants looking for linebacker support. He looks like he could make this team, especially with the injuries kind of hurting them right now. But in any case, we look ahead to week 1. All of our starters are primarily healthy. Hopefully John Michael Schmitz is okay. That was a big loss with another foot injury. Or was it ankle injury? I think he got rolled up on, or whatever it might have been. So, we'll be monitoring that and keeping guys informed. But any last thoughts, Anthony?
It's the final week of the preseason. Most of the guys you're watching aren't going to be on the team. It's always going to be ugly and boring to watch, but the Giants have a lot of work cut out for them. I think that all of their backups have looked relatively bad throughout this preseason. The offense has been very stale with Brian Dable calling the plays, and I just hope that it turns around once all the starters are on the field in week 1, because so far what we've seen has been a little bit discouraging. Like I said, it's always going to be boring in the final week of the preseason. You're watching guys that aren't going to be on NFL rosters, but at the end of the day, I do think that it's going to be an uphill battle for this team to make the necessary improvements to the roster that they want to make between now and the start of the regular season, because we're 2 weeks away from the season kicking off, and the Giants still don't have a CB2, and they still have a lot of question marks all over the rest of the field. So it's going to be an interesting 2 weeks as Joe Schoen constructs this roster, but I'm excited to kind of tune in and continue to discuss on the channel the different moves that they can make and that they end up making.
Absolutely, my friends. But as always, make sure to like and subscribe to the Fireside Giants podcast and on social media, Fireside Giants, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all over the place. Got you guys covered with all the updates, news, and obviously podcast stuff like that. And make sure to drop your comments down low in the YouTube comment section. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.
Perfect.